episode, we trace the journey of dynamic Priya Bhumkar, Managing Director of Soujanya Color Private Limited.
I was born and brought up in Chembur in Mumbai. A small family, father, mother, myself, and then I had a brother who is about 5 years younger than me.
When she was born, the doctor told me, look, you have a beti and this is the Nachi Peti.
Raised in a modest, middle-class, happy family, her parents' modern and liberal thinking fostered Priya's remarkable qualities as a young girl. A bright student, she was always at the forefront of other activities, thus etching a well-rounded, charismatic persona.
She used to read a lot from childhood. All of us, my husband, myself, up to 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, we used to read and read and read.
From reading, actually one gets a peek into how great minds think. And there is a lot of learning from that which happens. There is a lot of molding of the personality, a lot of molding of the thought process. When my 10th results came and I had good marks, better than what I expected. And then I said, well, I seem to have done well. Let me choose science.
She chose to do science more by accident than by choice. There at Ruia College, Matunga, she met Dr. Ashish Bhumkar, her life partner of 40 years.
I met her when we were very mature at the age of 16. In college in 11th standard.
We had a very open atmosphere. In both of our homes. So I went home and I told my mother, look, there is a very nice boy in my class and he has written me a letter and I'd like to be friends with him.
We did get married for registration. It was a simple on the dining table in old clothes signing, because essentially we knew that a relationship is beyond a marriage. And marriage is just a social endorsement of a relationship which we call love.
When I married, Ashish education was still going on. So he was in another city. He was studying in Pune. So almost 2.5 years after my marriage, I lived here in Mumbai in a house and he was studying in Pune, and then we used to meet a weekend or every other weekend. Either he would come down or I would go, and that's how we continued those next few years. Coming from a chemist background, I chose to graduate with finance in my management. So it was quite tough for me because I had no clue about what accounts is or what company law is, what taxation is. But every time I studied a subject of finance in my MBA program, my pulse would start racing and I would start to feel very excited. So probably the entrepreneur's blood was always there within me.
Priya was an entrepreneur. In her spirit, in her subconscious, she was always an entrepreneur. If not this, she would have created something from the scratch of her own.
Though the shift from science and finance was not easy, every subject of finance stirred her entrepreneurial spirit. She brought this spirit into Soujanya and created a consolidated business for the family to work together.
She was part of the business. Part of her expression as an entrepreneur were coming, but she was very gracious enough, and my father and she shared a mutually respectable space.
She brought in new ideas, youthful energy, and instilled a value-based system in the enterprise.
Company at that time was just about 2 or 3 years since its inception. So it was a building phase for the company which was there. We were a really small team, and my father-in-law, being a technocrat, took care of the technology part and then the customer base and the marketing part. And my mom-in-law, although she had been a housewife throughout her life, she actually undertook to do the entire administration and all the money matters.
मिस्टर भूमकर टेक्निकल होते, मी फायनान्स बघत होते, पण ॲडमिनिस्ट्रेशन बघायला आमच्याकडे कोणीच नव्हतं. ती जागा प्रियानी भरून काढली आणि कंपनीची कशी ग्रोथ होईल याच्याकडे तिने खूप लक्ष दिलं. पहिल्यांदा आमच्या 3 छोट्या छोट्या युनिट्स होते. तिच्या व्हिजनमुळे एवढी मोठी जागा घ्यायचा विचार केला. तिचा उत्साह आणि कंपनी वाढवायची तिची तळमळ बघूनच ही मोठी कंपनी उभी झालेली आहे.
The whole idea of creating this consolidated single unit business was Priya's. My father very easily and happily agreed.
So that's how I became a part of the whole setup over the first initial years, and also brought some value to the business because I took care of some of the things which were not being taken care of at that time.
Under her expertise, they started exports. She took brave step to take the venture forward.
Ashish, my husband, had just finished his education from Pune. He has finished his master's in ENT, and then he came back to Mumbai. He started his practice, we set up his hospital, and then once he set up the hospital and about a year into his private practice, then we kind of felt ready to have a child. In 1992, Jashan was born. Once I became a mother, I couldn't think of going to office because I felt my primary responsibility was, taking care of my baby.
Being a mother requires another and a deeper level of commitment. She put her work on hold for 5 years to look after her son Jashan.
We believe that our son is a product of nature and we are just there to nurture. He's not a projection of our ego. That is the founding principle of our parenting, and I think she takes it to the nth degree of being unconditional in her love, yet realizing that he is a product of nature. And I think that combination allows her to be a supreme mother.
After the first few years where I was only working, part of the time and still going back home to look after my son, once he was a little bit grown up and came into mid-school, actually he told me one day, "Mummy, why don't you go do your own thing? I really don't need you to look after me that much anymore." So that's when I decided to take in a full-fledged plunge.
She upgraded her skill sets to make a series of impactful decision making and precision execution.
At each stage of growth of the business, there are challenges which come with that scale.
The biggest challenge or the stress that an entrepreneur is defined is by their risk appetite. And she has a fantastic risk appetite, which is combined, of course, with a very clear vision of the future. So when these two go hand in hand, they sort of neutralize each other. And the biggest phase that we saw is when she took debt, the financial debt, when majority of the people around, not within the family but in the business, thought that the bite she's taking is too big or the jump that she's taking is too big. I think that time the financial stress of how it will pan out and will the decision be right, and coming from a Maharashtrian middle class background for both of us, this was a big leap.
We make tanks of color. This is liquid color in liquid form, and or in other words, these are called as tints or colorants. If you're delivering a certain shade and a tinting strength and a tone of a blue or a green or a red to your customer, it has to be precisely the same. A batch made today, a batch made a year later, a batch made 5 years later. It has to be very, very precise. We felt at that time that if we are in the business of color, let's be the best in the business, where customers can say, Soujanya is a reliable partner for color. So we set a vision for the company and we decided we can be and we wish to be among the top 3 colorant producing companies in the world. This meant taking the journey of the company from a local SME company to becoming a global professional enterprise. And those were the next 2 years of my life, my professional life, where I was simply going crazy because I had no answers. How do you take a small local company and make it into a global professional enterprise? How exactly to make this transition happen? And while doing this search, I found actually a brilliant program at the Stanford School of Business. And then I went and enrolled myself there. And this program was called the Executive Program for Growing Companies. This was a brilliant program, and I found the answers in that program. I came back with a lot of ideas and plans about how exactly can we make this transition happen. How can we turn Soujanya Color into a global professional company? So we set a vision for the company. Then we had a strategy about how to achieve the vision. And then the third bit is the action part. And I always say that merely having a vision is no good. Having a strategy without a vision is also no good. And simply doing actions without a vision and a strategy is no good. At the same time, having a vision, having a strategy but no action also doesn't get you anywhere. So these 3, they are like triplets and they must come one after the other.
शानदार और बेदाग सफर, मार्केट का नंबर 1 लीडर, भरोसे का सबसे बड़ा नाम, लेकिन अंदाज बिल्कुल आम, जिसके तजुर्बे और समझ को करें दिग्गज भी सलाम। आसान भाषा में सिर्फ मुनाफे की बात, तभी तो देश चलता है जी बिजनेस के साथ। 16 साल से आपका भरोसेमंद बिजनेस न्यूज चैनल जी बिजनेस, आपका फायदा।
आपका चहेता चैनल जी बिजनेस अब आपके फिंगर टिप पर। लाइव टीवी, देश दुनिया, शेयर बाजार और बिजनेस वर्ल्ड का सारा एक्शन हिंदी और इंग्लिश में। कमोडिटी मार्केट का हर अपडेट, कंज्यूमर और कारोबार के साथ सियासत, खेल, मनोरंजन और लाइफस्टाइल, टेक्नोलॉजी, ऑटो और एजुकेशन की हर हलचल, कहीं भी कभी भी। अभी डाउनलोड करें जी बिजनेस ऐप। जी बिजनेस, आपका फायदा।
डीजल सीजन में आपको क्या चाहिए? सबसे पहले और तेज नतीजे, सही और सटीक विश्लेषण, नतीजों से पहले, नतीजों के वक्त और नतीजों के बाद शेयर के भाव का उतार चढ़ाव और परफेक्ट मूवमेंट